You know, I've been told by multiple people whose opinions I very much so do trust that it is not that the Japanese are inherently immune to work or anything, or that they're even particularly resistant to it. It is merely that the Japanese are really slow to catch on to trends. And titles like these makes me think that once again they have a point. Shifting away from fan service is one of the big talking points of this article covering an upcoming game called Atelier Ryza 3, featuring the beloved main character and her enormous thighs. Which, ironically, has been the series' primary selling point, I shit ye not. Atelier Ryza producers surprised that fans find lead character so sexy, the surprised Japanese man says, as he's like, oh no, the character has no sexual innuendo whatsoever. Yes, none whatsoever. Surprised my ass. Literally, arse, as Ryza's primary identifying features is indeed her buttocks and her luscious thighs. In fact, the only reason why I know this series exists is because the deluge of thigh memes that appeared around the same time as the first game. Now, full disclosure here, I haven't played these games. JRPGs, I find them difficult to engage with quite often. I like myself a good visual novel, but JRPGs, they often just don't quite connect with me anymore, you know? So I haven't played these, I don't know what they're about really, but I do know what this nonsense is about. So shifting away from fanservice. Why is fanservice bad? Well, let's hear the reason why they're shifting away from it, I suppose. Having reviewed all of the Switch entries in the past, we've noticed a shift from what you might call a more fan-servicey style towards RPGs that feel like they're trying to appeal to a much wider audience. Ah yes, the good old-fashioned wider audience. Ah yes, we need as many people to play the game as possible, and that's why we can't have fan service in the game, because, well, then only people who like the game might play it. Okay, and removing the panty shots will totally get people who weren't at all interested in JRPGs to play the JRPG. The logic seems flawed, but very well. Has it been a conscious decision to redirect the style of the franchise in this way? Yes, it is. We want as many players as possible to pick up and play our games. For this reason, we are constantly listening to the opinions of various players and looking for and coming up with content that appear they will enjoy again. We would be happy if many people think of Gust's game when they think of JRPGs. Okay, so basically, he's been told a line by the reporter and gone, let's parrot that. Now, immediately, this makes me think that, okay, maybe he's just, talking to a Westerner and thinking, oof, those Westerners. I have some weird opinions sometimes. Maybe I should just, give his answer back to him and nod along and smile. Entirely possible, but for a moment, let's assume that this is said in seriousness, right? You need to remove fan service so that more people will play your game. Okay. How does this make sense? Now, I've seen the argument that's made primarily by people of a certain spectrum, that seeing fanservice brings them out of the game, you see. They're playing the video game, and then there's a panty shot, and they're like, well, that's me taken right out of my immersion right there. After all, I am a male feminist, and the idea of seeing female underwear is a distant dream for me. Which, to be fair, is actually a pretty reasonable explanation. It'd be like looking out the window and there's a flying pig playing the trumpet out there just circling around. You'd be like, well, that's a bit weird. It certainly does take me out of my immersion a little bit, and yeah, I can see it, but beyond a small subset of male feminists who are disgusted at the sight of female underwear, I can only suppose, what increased in general appeal will there be for a game to not have fan service, quote unquote? Bearing in mind that this is a fairly innocent looking goddamn game here. Even this fan service stuff here and some of the marketing, which was clearly at least a little bit tantalizing, showing the character bent over, etc., was hardly what I called, etchy levels, but I don't know, maybe they flip up the character's skirts every 5 seconds in the actual game. She's wearing hot pants, but yeah, details. But even if that is the case, I could see it if you're playing a hyper serious game, right? It's you're playing a game about the Holocaust or something, okay? And you're saving Jews from prison camps, and then suddenly there is random shirt shots of the female main character or something. I'd be like, okay. Doesn't quite fit in with the atmosphere and the ambiance, fair enough. But in a game like this, in a Japanese game of all things, in which this is pretty much just part of the core, I don't really think that is going to be a problem. So, what kind of an audience would they want to try to be trying to get into their games, and then removing fan service to appeal to that audience? Well, it is the even more mythical wider audience. It is the specifically woke mythical wider audience, which is an even smaller subset than the usual wider audience. Because, again, it is literally in the term fan service. You are doing something that your fans like. By definition, they're probably not going to dislike it. But if you're doing something that your fans don't like the removal of fan service, then you must be appealing to somebody who isn't your fans. And in this case, well, I've got a pretty clear mental image of how that might be. But the problem is, these people don't really play video games. At all, really. And if they do, it's artsy-partsy retard shit, and hardly this kind of stuff. I mean, hell, let's see here. I think they, wasn't the box art here? Can I open the box art wider? Oh, there we go. Does this seem like the kind of woke scold type game? Like you've got a pair of cute girls, you've got little Shota there, I guess, and you've got the enormous buff dude. No, this seems like a classical JRPG, if anything. It is a ridiculous and self-defeating notion. And again, the only people they would be targeting is if they have this stereotypical view of the West. Like, oh, we need to make our game big in the West. Well, how do we do that? Well, Westerners they just really hate women. Which, it's a bit of an oversimplification, frankly, sir. I beg you, please allow me to explain. My brand of sexism isn't against sexy women, you see. Oh god. We could belabor this point, frankly, because it's ridiculous, but in all due likelihood it's the same thing as the Forspoken game. That's another beautiful example, where a Japanese studio was told, like, okay, we've got to make something for the Western sensibility. Well, what do Westerners like? Well, they're obsessed with racism, apparently. They're obsessed with anti-racism. So what is anti-racism? Well, it's when you have a black character. Okay, and what else have you got? Well, we're going to put her in an isekai, because people like women too, well, so long as they're the right color, of course, and we're going to give her a talking bracelet that she's going to name Cuffs, as in, you know, cuffs. Yeah. And then we're going to have her do incredibly boring shit. Oh, great. What do you think we are? At this point, I really kind of want to just delve into the developer's brain and figure out what their definition of a Westerner is, because it must be something pretty goddamn twisted at this point, surely. Now, the hope is that this is simply just a Japanese developer being asked questions by a Westerner for a Western outlet and deciding to parrot the party line, because he's not very committal in his response here at all. It's just like, oh yeah, no, this is totally a thing we do because we want more people to play our things, rather than expanding upon asking him like, okay, but why do you think more people would play our stuff if we have less fan service in it? That's just kind of weird. But it is also entirely possible that this is the beginning of Japan finally going woke, as the West is finally about to emerge from the thick malaise of this garbage. We're going to end up in a time where we've gotten used to manga and anime, and then that's going to turn idiotic, and then we're going to sit there and be like, okay, wow, I hope the comic book scene resurrects. Oh god, help me. Dark days ahead, I suppose, but no, this is obviously, it's self-evidently ridiculous. I mean, again, it's in the term, goddammit. there's no way this is serious, or at the very least, I hope it isn't, because I'm not a big fan of this series because I haven't played it. Maybe it's amazing, but for the sake of the people who do like it, I do hope that they don't actively, well, do things against your interests because they think that somebody else who isn't playing the game might like it. God, I hate this idea. Like, the wider audience has been a curse on gaming for, oh god, this started a long time ago, like 20 years ago, when suddenly the people making video games elected to start targeting the people who don't play video games. A brilliant notion, and I'm sure it'll work out wonderfully for JRPGs as well. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.